19th, 2008. We're in the Southfield Public Library. And today we will be interviewing Mr. William H. Burnett. Mr. Burnett was, Mr. Burnett was born August 22, 1946, and he served in the Vietnam era. So, Mr. Burnett, or can I call you Bill?
Yes.
Okay. Bill, can you just give us some background information about where you were born and some family detail, as far as, parent occupation, maybe your sisters and number of sisters and brothers?
Oh, sure.
And what you were doing before you enlisted?
I was born, as you said, Dan, in Anniston, Alabama, a small town between Birmingham and Atlanta. So it's a military town near the Fort McClellan Army Base. Born there in August 1946. Mm-hmm. I entered high school there, a small high school called Calhoun County Training School. Graduated in 1964. Later joined the military, joined the Army, and 1 June 1964. Mm-hmm. And after joining the military, I went to basic training at Fort Gordon, Georgia. Mm-hmm. Later took my advanced infantry training at Fort Jackson, South Carolina. Okay. And from there, I went to my main unit, which was Fort Campbell, Kentucky, mm-hmm. and that was later on in that year.
Okay. And what were you doing before you enlisted?
Before I enlisted in the military, I was a high school kid,
okay. Young
kid, just graduating from high school.
Okay. What prompted you to enlist?
Well, Dan, there have been times in my life where there were some degree of family problems. Mm-hmm. And I had a slight problem at one time with a stepfather. Mm-hmm. And not going to be laboring going into mm-hmm. details, but there were some problems with he and my mother, and I didn't like the way he was treating her at one time or the other. Mm-hmm. So I decided the best thing for me is to be a man, mm-hmm. get out of his house, and go serve the military and do my duty.
Okay. Okay. And what was your highest rank in the military?
Sergeant, okay. Sergeant E5.
Okay. When you went to basic, and this was at Fort Jackson, was it?
No, Fort Gordon. Fort Gordon, Georgia.
Okay. What did you think of basic training?
Well, Dan, it was an experience. Mm-hmm. I have to admit. A kid just out of high school, mm-hmm. Naturally, they're teaching you defense, mm-hmm. how to defend your country, mm-hmm. and part of defense is shooting a weapon, mm-hmm. which I learned how to handle a weapon, mm-hmm. On the farm with my uncle who raised me, mm-hmm. but to use a weapon on a defense scale mm-hmm. was a little bit different experience, mm-hmm. and a lot of the other things that the military teach you, but the most important thing of all, Dan, mm-hmm. was that I learned to be a man. Mm-hmm. It taught me to be a man, and it taught me how to grow up with accepting mm-hmm. responsibility. Mm-hmm. And I value that training and that learning experience that I gained mm-hmm. from joining the military. Mm-hmm. It was a wonderful experience.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. How did you adjust to basic? Was it any real adjustment?
It was tough. There have been days that I have to admit, Dan, that mm-hmm. I had to go out behind the building and talk to my good Father up above, mm-hmm. and there were times that I missed home, missed being at home, mm-hmm. and a few tears sometimes. You share a few tears because you get homesick, but sooner than later mm-hmm. you get over it, and you move on.
Okay. Yeah. How old were you then?
17.
17. Okay. Did you have any other family members that served in the military?
I had a brother who served in the Air Force.
Older?
He was younger. I'm the oldest of 4 boys.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. Okay. How did you depart going to Fort Gordon? Was it by bus, train, or what mode of transportation?
Bus.
Okay.
Back then, we used to call it Big Red, which mm-hmm. was the big Greyhound bus.
Oh, okay.
And we used the bus for most of our experiences, except for mm-hmm. My transition from stateside to Vietnam, naturally it had to be by air. But all the others was by bus.
Okay. Once you finished basic, where did you go in?
From our basic training, which was at Fort Gordon, Georgia, we left there and we were transferred to our advanced infantry training center, which was at Fort Jackson, South Carolina.
Okay.
That's what we call the Red Clay Country.
Okay.
And that was an 8-week experience there.
So what was your military specialty?
My military specialty was in supply.
Supply? Okay.
Yeah.
How long were you at Fort Jackson?
I think it was it 8 weeks, I believe it was? I'm not sure, but I think it was about 8 weeks. Yeah.
And so, how was the difference between Fort Jackson and Fort Gordon? Night and day?
Well,
from the training.
I guess the reason the military called it advanced is that you're now going from one phase of training, which is teaching you to be transitioned from being a young kid right out of high school to manhood, learning the disciplines that the military teaches, which is taking orders, how to take orders, how to say yes sir, yes ma'am, no sir, no ma'am, and how to do it with a smile, and how not to question your orders. The advanced portion of that is to take what you have already learned and expound on it and improve that.
Okay. So you finished Fort Jackson, and then
once you finish your advanced infantry training, which was at Fort Jackson, then they will assign you to a base, a solid military base. Now, at that time, during that era, most of my friends wanted to join the elite organization, which is what we call the 101st Airborne Division. Most of my friends wanted to join that elite organization, and we did. We signed up to be paratroopers. They meaning the military, then sent us to Airborne Paratrooper School, which is at Fort Benning, Georgia. And we went to Fort Benning, Georgia for Airborne Paratrooper School. Now, let me say this while I'm on that subject. The first time I ever set foot in an airplane was the day I was scheduled to jump. Now, can you imagine? That was a hell of an experience. Simply because back then we were using the old C-119s, which was called the flying boxcar. That plane made more noise than atomic machine gun sitting right next to you. It would vibrate your head off. But those were the military aircraft that were used for jump training. The first day I ever set foot in an airplane was that day that I was scheduled to jump. Show you a little comedy part of that was that we were still on the runway, and I thought we were in the air. Wow. That's how much the plane was vibrating on the runway. So I asked my comrades next to me, are we ready to jump? The guy looked at me and said, we're still on the ground. So
you were still 17.
I was still 17. I've never been in an airplane before, mind you. So I look back at that and I laugh about it.
That's interesting. Yeah. So you went to jump school.
Jump school.
Fort Benning.
Fort Benning.
How long were you there?
I think Fort Benning was about another 8 weeks.
8 weeks. And what was unique about that? Was that more difficult, or was it more? Did it get more difficult, or was it
not so much difficult then, but it was more of a training experience. They taught us discipline. There was a great deal of physical searching that we had to do. We had to really become physically fit, 100% physically fit. Everything you did in that school was about physical education. We had to get up in the morning. You do 100 push-ups before breakfast. We